Bang, bang, guys. How you doing today? It's Tom from Liquidation Motivation. And once again, we're doing a collaboration with the WHSL Marketplace trade show that's located in Louisville, Kentucky at the Convention Center, April 21st and 22nd, guys. Meet me there. We're going to have some meetups. We got some great things planned, and I'm super excited about seeing everybody at the trade show, guys. This is one of the greatest events in the liquidation industry. And if you don't go there and meet people and collaborate with people and join up with people and just build your business from the grassroots up, you're missing out, guys. I don't know how many people in my life say, oh, maybe I'll go next year. And then they go out of business. This is where you can talk face to face with somebody. This is where you can find out what they do in their business, and then you can figure out how you both can make some money together, because that's what this industry is all about. So I'm super excited today. I have Rich Bulger coming to the stage here from All Things Circular. How you doing, Rich?
Tom, did you start it off with a bang bang? I got to up my energy for this podcast. I'm kind of starstruck. I've been following you for a while, so it's good to meet another industry titan in a different state. So thanks for having me on the show today.
No, 100%. My favorite crypto podcast starts off with bang bang, so I'm kind of stealing that. But that's we won't tell him that I'm doing it. But so, anyways, Rich, for the people out there, who is Rich Bulger and what is All Things Circular?
Thanks, Tom. My background, I had 17 years at Verizon. So I started my career as a temp taking bill payments in a store in Columbia, South Carolina. Moved through customer service, sales management. I spent half of my life working in retail on quota. In 2009, I became the youngest director in the company. They put two jobs together. One was a marketing job, $6 billion region, 10 million subscribers. I had to grow and keep customers. The other job was operations. I had 127 stores. I had to move inventory into and out of and manage some financial KPIs, driving down unwanted returns, no fault found, warranty claims. But what pulled me into the space that I'm in now is I started Verizon's very first retail trade-in program with the thought of, if I could put more money in a customer's pocket by harnessing value that wasn't easy for them to get, I could sell more things. Like, you're more likely to sell your house when you're buying a new house. You're more likely to sell your car when you're buying a new car. You're more likely to sell your phone when you're buying a new phone. So I started that program with the intent to sell more things, and the program took off. It was a new revenue.
Wait, hang on a second. So you started the trade-in program at Verizon. What did people do with their phones before that?
They would throw them in a drawer. Or the thought from corporate leadership is, well, people will give them to their kids, and there's this whole thing that people will just self-manage. But I was actually told that Verizon was a cell phone company, spelled S-E-L-L, not a buy phone company. So a lot of people thought I was crazy trying to buy phones back. And now, if you take that program away, it'll impact the stock price of Verizon. So
100%. That's incredible. Because as a consumer of Verizon cell phones my whole life, when they started doing that trade-in program, that totally changed everything. What do you mean I'm going to get $600 for my old phone off this new phone? And so you started that program. That's like legendary right there. That's like,
you would think that it would be something that people would naturally grab to. It makes sense. If their phone's worth $100 and you can get more than 100 for it, well, then that equipment becomes a better form of payment. But it took years to get the corporate buy-in to be able to do that. And when I presented the results to the CEO, our region was the largest region of 21 regions. For the first time, our region was number one, not just in year-over-year growth, but in every attachment rate that was measured by our company. And we had about 26 different measurements, including customer satisfaction, because people felt like they got more value walking in the store because they got benefit for their old thing. The program took off, and the CEO was like, all right, cool. Let's put this in all the stores. And I got a call after that review from the vice president of supply chain. She said, Rich, I heard you had a great review and you're amazing at reverse logistics. How would you like to move to Fort Worth, Texas and run Verizon CRTC? And I'm like, well, that sounds awesome. Thank you for thinking of me. But I've got two questions. What's reverse logistics and what is a CRTC? So CRTC is a Verizonism, a centralized returns and testing center. So I ran a facility that's right across the street from where I'm at now, where I pushed 15 million devices through a return process. I returned devices from stores. I returned them directly from customers through warranty programs. I ran the warranty loop. It was a $300 million a year P&L, and did that for 2 years, learned how to assess cosmetic and functional capability. And then they put me over the monetization team after that when the trade-in program broke $1 billion in revenue. And same VPs like, Rich, you're also really good at selling. I like to say I'm a salesperson trapped in the body of a reverse logistician. She goes, you spent $300 million, the program broke $1 billion. I need you to grow revenues by $300 million, take over the sales team, and build me a plan. And just like Tom in the liquidation industry, anything reverse, if you're trying to generate value, there's 3 things that you focus on. How do you get product? How do you process more efficiently? How do you generate value in different ways? So I sought out new sources of supply. I put Verizon on eBay, Amazon, Sears.com, Walmart.com. To date, they're the only carrier that's advertising good, better, best using their primary brand. And I created 2 sub-brands. In 2 years, grew revenues from $1 billion to $1.6 billion. And then I had a chance to retire from Verizon. New CEO came in, looked at the balance sheet, said we're paying too many people too much. And if you're not on commission, and I wasn't, even though me and my little team of 8 were running 2% of Verizon's revenue, no one knew what I did. And I got a early retirement offer that I didn't have to take, but it was enough to pay off my house and fund both my kids' college. So I couldn't afford to say no. And they advertised that they were doing that. So my phone started blowing up. And I went to not the highest paying job offer I had, but the hardest one with Cisco networking and computing. Think routers, think switches. I got to run their global reverse logistics. So I ran plants in the Netherlands, Hong Kong, Japan. I got to do international reverse logistics at scale. It has different care about than a brand. So I got to learn the inner workings of what brands care about. And then after 3.5 years, 3 Gartner Supply Chain Awards, COVID broke the supply chain. My father passed away from it. I wanted to make a difference. So I left corporate and took over my first company as CEO that was buying and selling. They started with shoes. They moved into mobility. I grew revenues from 27 million to 116, matching used supply with used demand, putting my money where my mouth was. And when I had a chance to leave that company, I had a non-compete. So with that 12 months that I had a non-compete, I'm like, well, if I'm going to go to jail for 12 months, I'm going to come out with a prison body and motivation. So how do I get as strong as I possibly can? I wrote a book. I finished a master's degree. We started teaching international reverse logistics master classes because there's no education on this. And I started doing advisory work. And that's kind of the premise of All Things Circular right now. We're a thought leadership organization that provides education. We do our own podcast. I'm not nearly as good as you, Tom, but we've got over 57 episodes that we've shot. We just launched our 46th episode. And we do advisory work helping major companies right now help optimize their return programs. And liquidation is a primary valuation channel that not a lot of people understand. So that's a little bit about me. Sorry for the long wind and how I got here.
No, that's great. I mean, we interview a lot of people on our channels, and there's hustlers and then there's intellectuals. I certainly put you at the top of that list there, man. That's an incredible resume, Rich.
Well, I'm a kid from Missouri. I barely graduated high school. I drove trucks in the military, joined the Army at 17, and got out when I was 20. So I served my entire 3-year commitment before I was able to have a legal drink off post. So I like to say I'm not the smartest person in any room. It's one of the ways I think God keeps me humble.
There you go. Okay, so now you get to All Things Circular. So what is your business doing now? What is the core concept of All Things Circular?
So one of the things that I found when I went from sales and marketing to reverse logistics, it almost killed me. I mean, it was really stressful. I like to say it was like going from playing tennis to Taekwondo. The rules of engagement are entirely different. And if you mess up, you get kicked in the face. Reverse logistics is one half of a product's circular journey. forward goes to the point of use. Your shirt, the silver bait shirt, will never be more forward than it is on your body right now. But if you decide you don't want it for whatever reason, or if it goes to a retailer and it doesn't sell, reverse starts when the product moves away from its original destination. And then you've got chaos factors. It might not be in the same condition. You have to assess, how does it look? How does it function? And then you have to find different valuation channels. How do you extract value for it, which starts the product's forward journey again? And you have to match the product from the hands of the first customer into the hands of the second customer through logistics. What I found, Tom, if you use just the US economy, $5.2 trillion in retail value is generated in 2024. I haven't seen the 2025 final numbers yet. But unwanted returns, bought, changed my mind, closeout stock rotations, retailers gave back $890 billion in what I call contra revenue. And the desires to drive that down, but that number is growing at an exponential rate as customers change from brick and mortar shopping to online. And then you've got the secondary market in the US. Now it's north of 900 billion, finding value for things that people no longer want, like used iPhones or other types of returns that are generated through circular sales programs like trade-in, product as a service, lease, where you're trying to actually compel returns up during the sales cycle instead of compelling them down, driving down unwanted returns. And when I served on the advisory board of the Reverse Logistics Association at Cisco, I was working with Amazon, Dell, 3PLs like Return Pro, all trying to solve this problem. There's virtually no education on this, Tom. I found one college on the planet that has a bachelor's and a master's degree program in reverse logistics. I took the master's program. It was online. I took it one class at a time. The American Public University Systems, they built the class for the RLA. And the book that they used was written in 1999 called Going Backwards, and the premise is all returns are bad. So when I started getting C's on my assignments in one class because the professor was trying to coach me on best practices that drive returns up, like a trade-in program. It's like, why would you ever want to drive returns up? I'm like, well, if I can buy something and spend $10 and get 20 for it, or buy it for 100 and get 200, I should do that every single time. And that's kind of the premise of how circular programs work. He's like, nope, see, you're wrong. It's not in the book. All returns are bad. And I'm like, lots changed since 99. So he told me that if it wasn't in a book, I couldn't write about it. And when I offered to help write a new book, he told me I couldn't because I wasn't a professor. So I wrote a book, and now it's the textbook for the college course I was getting a C in. And that kind of became the epiphany of, we've got to educate. And I'm not even sold, Tom, that my book is the best book. It's one of the only recent ones that are out there. But with all things circular, these 3-hour master classes or these workshops that we're doing for Fortune 50 companies like Honeywell, HP, there's a lot of people that are trying to figure out how to do it, and there's not a lot of education on how. And that's what the all things circular ecosystem between books. Peter Evans got a PhD from MIT as part of our team. He's the smart one. I'm the Army truck driver. Vic D'Arcy, I work with at Cisco. She ran Cisco's reverse monetization team. She's from the UK. She's my podcast super co-host. Female British perspective. I've got the US male perspective. She's taught me Angry British. And then, Tom, I went and I sought out a good friend of yours and someone who's probably known very much to this channel, Damian Pollock, who at the time was doing a podcast that was matching supply and demand. I was looking at buying an e-commerce company that was doing returns, and I knew I needed to learn a different way to sell. I knew I needed to learn a different category to sell. And through shows like WHSL and ASD Market Week, it was meeting friends that I hadn't met and learning a different way to match used supply with used demand. First time I heard bin stores, which I know you're a super pro at. So this is an incredible journey. I get to do this. I get to learn every day, meet great people. And education is a big passion of ours.
Nice. Yeah. Damien is a great guy, great friend of mine. I love Damien. We've had him on our podcast several times. So I think you found the perfect partner. And, I used to call him the young guns, him and little Colton, used to run around like 24 years old, like, hey guys, we're taking over this industry. And, we just bonded from day one. And I think it's an absolute great partner to have, Rich. So.
Yeah, he's said some great things about you, turned me on to your podcast, and we had the pleasure of meeting for the first time earlier this year at NRF Rev in New York City.
Yeah. So, I've always considered myself like, I just buy and sell stuff for a living. That's kind of my job. That's what I do. But you're like the intellectual level above me that gives me the opportunity to buy these loads. And so you're figuring out, all right, how do we solve these organizations or retailers' problems? And then you need guys like me to buy these loads and then to figure out how we can flip these loads. So tell me the challenges with dealing with these large companies. I don't even know how you get in the door to talk to somebody like, obviously with your resume that helps, but what's the challenges dealing with these large organizations?
Yeah, so great point. And I've had a chance to walk and view this industry from every position you can, from a brand to a distributor to a CEO of a company that's buying and selling to a customer of used products. So one of the things that I like to help educate is the fact that, number one, the people that are in the positions of power in these companies have not underwent any formal training. So everyone goes in and they try to do the best that they can. And in our master classes, we actually do some illustrations of this where we lay out some products on the table. It's very interactive, teams of 8. We say, come up with your grading standard. Here's what you see. eBay, Amazon, Sears.com, Walmart.com, Rebello, all of them have their own different grading criteria, none of which match. All think that their marketplace is unique and different. And then when we put all of the different grades that come up from the workshop onto a word cloud, it's confusing. But it's all driven by people who are plucked from different parts of the business. I came from marketing. I have people that have come from finance, from legal, from forward supply chain, getting put into reverse, and you're told just to figure it out. So the main supply sources that most people are trying to buy from are run by people that are doing the best that they can without a manual. There's tons of finance courses. There's tons of sales courses. There's tons of supply chain courses. And I've talked to a lot of them and asked the people getting supply chain degrees. Just did Auburn's Fusion event a few months ago. So master's degree in supply chain. If you've ever taken a formal course on reverse logistics. I've asked the question at the RLA. I've asked it in leadership sessions. Tom, I've asked this question now over 400 times at these different events. Do you know how many people out of 400 have ever raised their hand and said, I've had a formal class?
I'm assuming very few. So
when those little bubbles fire up, I'm like, all right, cool. Who is that? Where did you go? The two that have come up with the formal education, and it could be a college course, it could be an onboarding course, were professors at the college I got my master's degree from. I'm like, you don't count. So when you understand that the people that you're talking to are doing the best that they can with an uncommon vernacular, you've got to learn that within the companies, the decision makers are different. You talk to finance different than you talk to sales, then you talk to marketing, then you talk to supply chain, then you talk to compliance. And every company has their own particular culture of what they're willing to accept. And it's networking to find the right person. When I was at Verizon, I had to run a $1.6 billion revenue stream with a team of 8. So what I learned is selling a $15 million lot could take the same amount of time as selling a $1,500 lot if the person that you're selling to wants to haggle or negotiate. So I didn't have time to do that. So I used a swim lane approach where I would liquidate to people that could go through and spend $15 to $30 million buying pallets of things. then they broke them down. I called them tier 2. So tier 1 is the primary supply chain source. Goodwill could be a tier 1 if that's the first place a customer brings the thing to. Or it could be a return that you take to your Walmart store, or it could be something that's traded into Eco ATM. Whoever the first person or entity that acquires the supply can typically get it at the lower cost. And then as it matriculates to what I call a tier 2, someone buying from the tier 1s, or a tier 3, someone buying from the tier 2s. Like if I sold to someone in the US, that would break it down and send it to Asia, where the grading standards are different in Japan than they are in Hong Kong, than they are in perhaps South America going into Mexico, or Europe going into the Netherlands. The secondary supply chain matches the used supply and used demands in the quantities that are needed, matching the cosmetic conditions that are accepted without having to train the upstream source initially. So our company goes through and we help translate. How can you approach? Sometimes we're brought in as a guidance counselor when a company is trying to respond to an RFP written by a company that wrote an RFP not really knowing what they were looking for. Kind of sounds like, hey, give us the solution to our returns problem. And the company is, well, give us your requirements. And you kind of have this pop-up fly that goes and drops down because everyone's kind of pointing at each other. We help go through and resolve those gaps and educate training. We've got some really cool exercises that we do, some of which you'll see at WHSL in our masterclass. But that's kind of how we approach it.
Let's talk about, I think there's a balance, right? So as a liquidator myself, and you as an advisor to these retailers, your goal is to maximize their return. My goal is to minimize my price. You know, how do you bridge the gap there within that in the industry?
So there's a couple ways. One of the terms that we like to use is the circularity delta. And the circularity delta, based upon where you're at in the reverse supply chain. Are you a customer that has the stuff? Are you the tier 1 that gets the stuff, or the tier 2, the tier 3? The circularity delta for a customer, for instance, if I spent $900 on my Osmos Pocket 3 camera and I decide that I don't want it anymore, I'm going to try to get as much of that $900 back as I possibly can. If I'm acquiring the Osmos Pocket 3 camera, my circularity delta is, how can I go through and acquire the thing at the lowest possible price so I can sell it to the next possible customer at the highest possible price? So understanding where you are in the value chain, everyone's trying to do what's right for their pockets. And let's take the unethical things out and just say that people are dealing in good faith. It's for the right reason, to extract value. I think we can both agree that maximum value is between the person that has the thing, what they're looking for to get it, and the customer 2 or 3 or 4 that wants to buy it. The value's in between. So understanding where you're positioned in the secondary supply chain, understanding the motivation factors of your supply source and the buying factors of your customers is how this process works. And I think that it's a fallacy that liquidators are not part of the circular economy. In my old world, I would get 30 to 40 LinkedIn requests every single day because people wanted to get access to the Verizon supply. Candidly, when I saw, well, hey, I'm a wholesaler, I'm a broker, I'm a liquidator, I knew that it was going to come with a sales call afterwards. And what I've often tried to position the businesses that I've run, the last company I rebranded into a name, Recirq, R-E-C-I-R-Q, because I wanted to not position myself as a liquidation company. I wanted to build a sustainability brand that helped match used supply with used demand. Let me build you a strategy for your fourth customer, which meant the same as liquidation, but it took a different spin on it. The colors of your bin store, white, green, sustainability colors, help people align emotionally with, hey, I'm doing something that's right for the environment and smart business. So for me, the people or the businesses that are acquiring supply, a lot of the folks, Tom, that you're talking about hunting, they've got a desired outcome of generating maximum benefit. I'll use a term in the book, benefit for their stuff. And benefit has two components: value, what you can get, and velocity, how fast can you get it?
Yeah.
So Tom, I like to use a fish market as an analogy. I lived in Charleston, South Carolina. When the boats would go out and the boats would come back, they'd have all different types of fish that they caught. Because you can't go through and say, I'm only going to catch A-grade wahi tuna, because fish don't bite like that. Returns don't come in like that. So on the dock, you'd have a couple different types of people. You'd have your sushi restaurants that could pay top dollar for things, and they would only buy a certain quality of fish and a certain amount of fish, because anything else they bought that was wasted didn't make sense. So you'd have to be able to downshift. You'd have your local grocery stores, the ones that didn't have to pay the retailer prices. They're not paying for transport. They could afford to pay more than the distributors that would buy in flash freeze and sell. So they would get the next cut. And then you have your distributors that would buy up a lot of the stuff. And then the lowest quality or the excess fish, the cat and dog food people would come in and buy up. Because two things would happen if no activity took place. The next day, more fish would come in, and the fish that were on the dock would rot. So liquidation is part of that value generation. If you can sell directly as new, you should. If you sell yourself directly to the end customer as a business, you should, if you have the culture and capabilities and tools and tech to do it. Or you sell it in bulk, or you sell it in liquidation. So every one of these streams has a value, what you can get, a velocity, how you can get it. And every friend that I've made, to include you and the people that are going to WHSL, have a huge part in making sure that waste is reduced.
Yeah, I hope you don't mind if I steal your analogy there, man. That's an incredible. You're 100% right. I mean, I'm always explaining to people that buy merchandise off me about there is levels in everything you buy, and that's a great way to explain it, Rich.
Well, I have to give credit, and I do in the book, because that is actually in the book. The fish market analogy is what it's called. I got that from a mentor of mine, Dave Stritzinger, that helped me kind of understand and break down the secondary market into Army truck driver language. So use it shamelessly. Don't credit me, credit Dave Stritzinger for it.
Hats off to Dave. That's a great analogy. What about I mean, when I go back and start thinking about, how things started like exploding, I remember, I think it might have been 2007. I might have the year wrong, but Amazon was caught in France dumping truckloads of their product in a landfill. And then there was this huge uprising from environmentalists, and so then I started seeing the Amazon loads everywhere after that point in time. Has it evolved how some of these organizations have gotten rid of their excess merchandise?
Oh, without question, especially since 2007. One of the things that I took the advantage of writing the book was I created a glossary of terms to try to orient people around a common vernacular. The process of going through, getting returns and dumping them into a landfill or manipulating reporting is sometimes termed greenwashing, where people are saying, hey, I'm doing this great thing for the environment, but it's really going on a ship, getting into a third world country that doesn't have the ability to process everything, and then throwing into mounds and mountains of just waste, while people are tapping themselves on the shoulder saying, what a great job I'm doing. So I think there's two things that have happened. The term green logistics started coming up in the early 2000s, movement of inventory without harm, recycling, closed loop recycling, where you grind things up and use them to build your next new thing, or just recycling, where you attempt to go through and have the stuff broken down into raw materials so another company can make the next product. or movement with green fuel or other things, that's a desired outcome of reverse logistics, a goal that you have. The circular economy or circular returns sound a lot like green logistics, but they're really different. The concept of circular economy returns are to drive returns up in order to go through and harness the benefit for them. But companies are starting to figure out, just like we did with Verizon in 2010, if I could buy your old phone back for $100 and then sell it for more than $100, but put $100 in your pocket to help you sell more new things. Well, now I've got to realize that I'm in competition for returns, breaking the old barrier that, hey, all returns are bad. Circular platforms, what Peter Evans is an expert on, what you learn at WHSL, those platforms help match used supply with used demand. So you've got some companies that were trying to attack the secondary market to have a PR win. ESG reporting, hit publicly sustainable targets. At Cisco, our CEO made a pledge at the World Economic Forum in Davos in 2015 that Cisco would take back 100% of used customers' product from anyone, anywhere at no charge. Sounded cool. And at the World Economic Forum in Davos, there's a whole bunch of environmentalists, world leaders that are pontificating how great we are. But I chose to go to Cisco from Verizon partially for that reason. I got to run that program. And I'm like, I want to figure out how to turn this from a cost center into a profit center. You can do what's right for the environment and what is smart business. And I think the frontier firms, as we like to call it, the companies that have a plan for selling to the first customer and have a plan for selling to the second, third, and fourth customer, revenue positive. Philips just announced that they got 27% of their revenue, exceeding their 25% target, off of selling to the second customer. So some companies are starting to figure out, hey, there's real money in this. It's not just environmental, it's economic too. And that's what the catalyst is. And technology just made it really easy to match supply and demand.
So tell me a little bit about technology. How do you think like AI is going to affect the industry and change things? Because I feel like people in my level as a liquidator are definitely going to get hurt by the AI boom. All the tech that's coming out right now, where these organizations are going to figure out directly, and unless you're direct with them, they're gonna try to maximize their profits and maybe cut some of the smaller people out. Do you think that's going to be a trend in the industry?
Sure. And just to demystify it, Tom, you and I have some years on us. The first industrial revolution was the cotton gin. The second was assembly lines. The third was the advent of computers. And if you go through and you say, well, hey, there are some companies that would take a look at a computer and say that's going to hurt my business. Because the reality is, in our part of the secondary market, we make and generate value based upon the inefficiencies of the supply source that's ahead of us. And I think that's kind of the root of your question. And we kind of have the fourth and fifth industrial revolutions going on simultaneously. Artificial intelligence and robotics and automation. So those two things are coming on right on top of each other right now. So my first piece of advice would be, just like we migrated and adopted the technology of a computer, we've got to adopt to the benefits of technology and automation, because our supply sources can and should evolve the way that they operate. Their customers are going to evolve the way that they buy and the way that they return. So my advice would be to embrace it. The how AI and ML operate. Man, it's like me saying, hey, Tom, how do you use your computer right now? There's multiple different programs that you have that all have different functions. But at the core of, I'll just focus in on the liquidation space. How do you identify supply sources? And understand how can you go through and approximate your bids to be able to be the most attractive option that the supply source has for you. So let's break it down into three parts. How do you get stuff? How do you process stuff more efficiently? How do you generate value for stuff? And AI and machine learning can help in each one of those equations. you can analyze, because if you're getting truckloads of stuff, truckloads of Amazon returns could change based upon what distribution center you get it from, or based upon what category within that distribution center. A breakout of how does it look and how does it function for clothing could be completely different than a truckload of monitors. And you've got to be able to bring in product from different sources, assess cosmetic and functional capabilities to present your grade to the next downstream. Because if you're buying from 12 places that all have 12 different grades, you don't want to educate your downstream sources where you're getting your stuff from. And you don't want them to have to understand 12 different grading criteria. So a lot of people will go through and say, well, here's what my grading criteria is. And they present it to the market, and that's totally fine. A certain percentage will come in A, B, C, new, good, better, best, whatever your grading vernacular is. A certain percentage will come in working or non-working. So you've got to be able to forecast and figure out, how can I make sure I'm buying low so I can sell high? Artificial intelligence and machine learning can help you optimize your lines. What process do you run first, second, third? It can help you assess cosmetic condition. Like there's cameras that will go through and say, here's length, width, depth of imperfections. AI and ML can also go through and say, here's your fish market analogy, value, what you can get, velocity, how fast you can get it. Do you sell it in quantities of one? Do you sell it in gaylords? Do you move things from a gaylord to a quantity of one because conditions on the market have changed? All kinds of way AI, and we could have another long conversation, Tom, on how individual agents have a task and a job and can create an alert for another agent to create a task and a job for the outputs. It's kind of wild how tasks can get automated, but AI and ML is nebulous, or at least it has been, but we're starting to see it real time right now make differences. So my advice, to answer your question, embrace it, change before you have to. Have your agents speak to your up and downstreams agents. The ones that figure out how to do that are going to win.
Yeah. I'm telling you, I'm addicted to that aspect of it right now. But if you just even look at every, when you Google something, they do an AI search on it. When you list something on eBay now, I don't know when's the last time you listed something on eBay, Rich, but it takes 5 seconds now because of the AI. We use many fast scans, a scanner that uses AI to list things in our other auctions. So we're trying to stay ahead of that curve, or at least be in the middle of the curve. But the people that ignore it, I think, are the ones that are going to lose out.
Yeah, I'm using many fast scans myself. I found out about them when I was at NRF Rev. There was a lot of people that were talking great about that program. But I do list things on eBay and Amazon, and being able to go through, snap a picture, have the background images removed to create a presentable front, identify what secondary market pricing is going for, and then having my system say, well, can I get more from that on wholesale, or should I list it on e-commerce? Because just because you can use many fast scans doesn't mean you should just throw it on eBay or Amazon. So great programs. The tech is getting really good, and it's on fire right now. I think our world is going to be different in 12 short months than it is right now.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And so my initial thought before you outline this was like the big guys are going to get more efficient, which is going to cost us. But in reality, we're all going to move up that chain together, because as they get more efficient, I'm going to get more efficient, and then we're all going to win in the long run. So
I'll give you a world example of how I saw that and what I tried to change in my old home. So at Verizon, we would go through, we would bring in product. I learned that the first and most important rule in reverse logistics is always protect customer information. I may or may not have had the FBI knock on my door at one point asking for a very specific question about a very specific device. And thank God I had a forensic record of when we cleared the information. But as a result, I would go through and I would say, all right, well, my downstream, you have to have R2 and ISO certification. You have to go through and clear things and provide me back the data records. And it would go through this whole process of people receiving, cleaning, grading, data clearing, preparing for disposition. And then when I learned that I could capture that forensic record on the outbound. I could clean it. I could image things and pass that downstream. If I could save my downstream vendor 50 cents or $2 on a process because it arrived clean, and because I had the record of data erasure that met R2 standards, just pass it along. Pass along the answers to your functional checks, because if someone wants to run something different, cool. When I learned that some of the tests that I ran had 100% pass rate, all I'm doing is burning money running that test, because that's not the thing that's breaking. So when I was able to go through and say, well, if I can save my downstream $1 or $2 in processing, what that's going to translate to is $1 or $2 more in bid price. So by optimizing the secondary market, that end customer is only going to pay what that end customer is going to pay. So how can you save time? If I could send pictures instead of just giving a grading classification, and people could go through the pictures and grade before the stuff even arrived and had it sold before it even got there. Well, now you're cutting days off of the supply chain, and that's how you make it more efficient to extract as much value as you can. Companies are starting to figure that out. And if we can make the processing more efficient, the ecosystem can win.
Yeah. No, I love it, Rich. I love it. You're right. All right, let's get back to all things circular. So where do you see your company going in the future? What's the next 5 years look like for Rich?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. So we have, this started out as just a book. Then Peter Evans said, hey, we should do master classes on this. So we did our first one in Barcelona about 1.5 years ago. And now we've done 15 of them in 6 different countries. We've got 8 on the books, with ASD Market Week and WHSL being 2 amongst them. So education is still really important. We want to turn that into an online program to help give companies like yours or companies like DHL, major manufacturers, brands, the ability to onboard and train their employees. We've got a lot of companies that are finding us through these master classes saying, we've got this problem. Can you help us figure it out? We're doing work for a hearing aid company called Audion that was really good at making things. They started out 6 years ago making hearing aids for their grandfather who couldn't hear him in their garage. And then when the U.S. legislation changed where you don't need to have a doctor's prescription to get a hearing aid, the barrier of entry lowered from $6,000 to they make them between $1,000 and $6,000, and they've grown their company exponentially, but their return problem has grown. So we're helping companies like Audion optimize their contracts, optimize their warranty process, pick 3PLs to go through and send things to for repair or refurbishment, and find value generation outlets. So if you're in the market for used hearing aids, we have them. I've got a 3PL that lives next to me that had orphan inventory. We talked about the 390 urns, like that you put grandma in, but they were sent. The company went out of business and now they're overstock and people don't know what to do about it. We've worked our way into a thought leadership position to have companies reach out to us and say, help us figure this out. Help us find out what processes we need, who we can trust. I love that part of my work. We've got the podcast, which is kind of like you. The podcast is how I learn. I get to go through and reach out to people that are talking about super cool things and saying, well, teach me about this. And the advisory work is coming as a result of it. There may or may not be practical applications. I'm working on a software program to help go through and do a reverse WMS that can match used supply with used demand that I want to make easily accessible for companies. Kind of like many fast scans helps you price. I think the world needs, how do you account for different inflow sources and outflow sources and move things efficiently? So I've got a program I'm working on with that. And I've got a little secret mad scientist layer where I'm going through and doing my own recirculation.
Nice. All right, Rich. So you're going to be at WHSL. You're going to have a booth there this year, correct? What do you plan on doing at your booth? I hear you have some exciting things planned.
So at WHSL, we're doing a masterclass. So we get a chance to go through, and Tom, our conversations have motivated me, and I'm really excited about the show because I think there is a fallacy. I'll bust a myth on this one. I think the fallacy for liquidation is, well, I'm too small for the big guys to even care about me. I've got kind of my niche. Hustlers can't be part of the circular ecosystem. And the myth that I want to bust is they are a very important part. So what we want to educate is how. Because what got our businesses to the size that they are today won't get us to where we're going to next. So we'll go through some real world reuse cases. We'll talk about the secondary market, what the motivating factors are. We'll talk about how companies are evolving. And it's a great networking event. We're hoping to have upwards of 100 folks there. 3 hours interactive with the table. You will walk away fast friends with the people at your table, and you'll see real answers to some common questions. There's going to be brands, there's going to be distributors, there's going to be secondary market players, and there's not a whole lot of opportunity where people get to talk real time about those things. So you'll learn the care abouts live and in person. We've got a panel session at WHSL that I believe you are on, moderated by someone that's near and dear to my heart, Peter Evans. He's a whole lot more interesting to me. And we'll have a booth and we'll be shooting our own podcast on site. So if you want to join the All Things Circular podcast for whatever reason, and Tom, we'll get you on one there, reach out.
Sounds good. All right. So if you guys want to meet Rich, he's going to have a booth at the WHSL show. The show is April 21st and 22nd in the Louisville, Kentucky Convention Center, guys. You have to go to this show. Rich, if people want to reach out to you before that, how do they get a hold of you, Rich?
All right, Tom, my love language is LinkedIn. You can find me, Rich Bulger, Bulger, on LinkedIn. Our website is All Things Circular, www.allthingscircular.com. Or you can go to the WHSL page. We'll post a link below where you can get access to the tickets to register for the masterclass. But LinkedIn, WhatsApp, I'll communicate very well on both, and I'm approachable.
There you go. There you go. That was a masterclass right there, everybody. So if you watch this, I know you took something away, guys. Hey, thanks for watching our podcast today. The collaboration between Liquidation Motivation and WHSL, and now All Things Circular, guys. Thanks for watching. Now go out there and make some money.